Hi, everybody. Thank you guys so much for coming out and spending your lunchtime with us. Um, for those that might not know, my name is Noreen O'Brien. I am a team member of the Center for Teaching and Learning with Fran Glazer and Jackie Jacoby. We're happy you're spending your Tuesday with us. Effective feedback is what you're here for the workshop, right? The process of grading and giving feedback is crucial. It is the most powerful lever we have to orient students' study efforts towards the most important things in the most appropriate ways. We owe it to our students to evaluate their work with the same diligence we would like applied to the evaluation of our own work. Students will pay most attention to what they think is being assessed, right? So, oops, click. First thing I want to do is a group activity with everyone today. Fran's going to put a link into the chat if you guys can access it, and it's going to take you to a Google form where we'll take a couple of minutes to answer the questions of thinking of a time when you received some really good feedback or praise that helped you grow, and what was that feedback and why was it so great? So this is what you should get to the Google form. You just have to type in. Pause. Did you get in the chat, the meeting chat to the?
Yeah, let's see.
Chat. Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Eugene, did you get from?
I'm in the chat. You expect us
Yeah.
not to type something in the chat?
No, if you hit that link that Fran gave us in the chat, it will take you to a Google form, and then the Google form will look like what's on the screen, and then you can type in your response to the question prompt.
One more time. I'm supposed to click on what to get there?
The link. Jackie just put another link in the meeting chat.
Okay. This is,
and that will take you to a page on your own computer that looks like what I have on the screen.
that seems to be what I have here, and I can type in here.
Yes.
Now, how do
And notice the form is asking about when you received feedback.
Hi, Maruk. We're just at our first activity. I think Jackie just put a link in the chat if you want to grab it, Maruk, and we're just going to the Google form and the prompt thinking of a time when you received some really good feedback or praise that helped you grow, and what the feedback was and why it was so great. I'm gonna shut off the chime so if anybody else comes in, we don't have to hear them. These are some great examples. So the feedback from an editor with that,
Mhm.
2 to 3 times. I'm curious how it feels after, after you do one round and maybe the first time you did it being asked to do another round. Were you anticipating?
Hmm.
Did you think you'd have one round and like, did you get discouraged?
Certainly possible. Is the question directed at anyone in particular?
And anyone, tell me what you're thinking, Eugene.
Well, I don't know. Usually they're not going to go more than 2 rounds. Otherwise they won't accept it. I mean, I just submitted a book review today to a journal called Husserl Studies, and they returned it to me. They said they would publish it, but that there was a review of comments. There were 9 of them. It took me about a week and a half, I suppose, to go through the review of comments and respond to them. And then I returned it, and then I heard that they would publish it. The editor said, "Thank you for your beautiful paper."
Congrats on that.
Sometimes it works.
Yes, but when we think of students, do you think they sometimes think I'm going to have to do multiple rounds
If I
of
don't have,
it?
if I don't have too many students, I will normally have them first write an outline, and I will comment on that, and then I will ask them for a draft after about half the semester, a couple of weeks after midterm, and the draft then I'll comment on extensively and return it to them, and they can, if they're not satisfied with their grade, they can send it, so they can redo it according to the comments and send it back to me.
Okay, so you basically build the project.
Yeah. Mhm.
Great. I love how I think twice here I read about being motivated, right? I'm actually interested too, learning from a professional. Do you think your acceptance of the criteria was different because who was giving it to you?
In my case,
Is that, did you put in did you play the
Yeah, no,
trumpet?
that was me.
that was you.
Yeah, so I mean, getting feedback from a professional, obviously, right, carries a lot of weight, right? So just you, even in your own thought process, just understanding the feedback that you're getting from someone that is at that level. So yeah, it does carry more weight, I would think, in your own mind. Myself now, being an adult as opposed to being a child when I first learned how to play trumpet, in 3rd grade, many years ago. You could better understand and absorb and kind of grasp that knowledge and that feedback that you're getting, as an adult now than you could as a child, right? So us being college professors and kind of dealing with that mid-range, they're not quite children, but they're not quite adults,
Yes.
So it's I think that's kind of the challenge we face as professors, on the feedback that we're giving them, and are they accepting it and really grasping it?
And I look at it too, thinking when you went into this, you knew their expertise, right?
Right.
And you kind of valued them. What they were, you saw, oh, this is a professional in this environment. I respect what they're going to say, right? So that could be different for students too, to that relationship or response. I could see that being too why you're probably more open. Where again, if you had been 16 and given that opportunity to be a professional, you might not have been the same, right? If you were like, oh, they're, and they might not have been at the same level. They didn't realize that how much, if Derek Jeter was going to hand me a bat, I think I now would be like, oh my God, and listen to every moment of it. I don't even like baseball, but right now I'd be like, oh my God, if there's somebody to teach me. Back in the day, I probably would have been like, okay, let's have a chat or something. But now I'd be like, okay, it's going to be a skill. I'm going to be able to pick up something. I might not be able to use it, but I might be able to share it with somebody else. So, Fran, you could tell, not a baseball player.
You always have to direct your criticism at the person you're criticizing. That varies. I would challenge the idea, though, that our students here at New York Tech are not adults. I certainly think they're adults. I treat them as adults. I mean, I treat them in philosophy the way I would expect to treat another colleague. I try to give them advice on the level that they happen to be at, but they certainly are adults.
Yes.
I treat them as such, absolutely. You do have some that are quite immature, right? You deal with those, professionally and respectfully. And there are others who are, well advanced beyond their years, but you're dealing with people who are kind of in that formative time frame of their lives, where they're kind of getting past the childhood thing and into the adult thing, and some aren't quite sure yet what that really means. So I mean, I always teach them and treat them professionally, and I actually tell them that my courses are basically MBA level courses. They're basically business type courses in the School of Engineering, and I think they appreciate that. They appreciate being treated as adults and respected as such.
Good.
Any other input or thoughts? Yeah. I like too when you told you
Oh.
exactly what. Hi, Amanda.
I put one about being direct because lately when I give comments to students, I try and sort of be as specific as I can because I don't think they're going to read everything. So of course you always do, I was taught to do a sandwich. You put in like 2 good things around the critique, but I also try to be sort of in a baseball metaphor. I try and hit it like right line drive down the center. I had 1 line drive and then I got out at second base and that was my whole career. But my point is I try and be as direct as possible and I try and not overwhelm the students with too much, but see what in a triage way will be the most relevant for whatever the next thing they're going to do is.
Which is telling them your expectations, right? You're being direct to them.
Yes, I mean, I'm being boosting morale too, but I also, and for each student, it's different. I try and be brief as well, and I try and prioritize what I think will be most useful.
And personalize it, it sounds like too. Well, you guys are doing great. I'm gonna slide back over to our presentation. So we have a few goals for our time together today. When we leave, you should be able to explain why feedback is valuable and give examples of feedback you've received and explain what makes it effective. So those 2 we can just check off, right? We just did together. We're going to talk now about the different kinds of feedback, how to communicate really clearly with students, and how to make it easier for you to provide them with effective feedback. Because surprisingly, I'm sure that's something being effective and time consuming. Nobody really said that, but Amanda, you're probably looking for hints if you're trying to really be direct to individual students, right? There are 2 broad categories of feedback. There's formative and summative. Can anyone tell me the difference between them? So
I don't know for sure, but I mean, formative sounds like something you're trying to make that person better or whatever, trying to form them. Summative is more just like information.
Yes, Robert, you're hitting it. That's the way to think of it. With formative, you're forming the student or you're forming the product, the work better, right? So summative is the sum of what students have learned. The final paper, the midterm exam covering multiple lessons. Another way to look at it is formative occurs during the learning process, giving students diagnostic feedback that they can use to revise their work. timely and specific feedback here saves everyone a lot of time later. So one way to do this is low stakes assignments such as discussion boards, reflection papers, or quizzes are a great way to provide formative feedback. An assignment with a low percentage grade allows less stress for the student, right? So they're not as scared to make errors. Look at Eugene, if he's doing an outline with the students, right? If he gives them their feedback before they start working on the next step of the process, which is timely feedback, kids can edit it, have it ready to submit and add to the final product, right? So that's their summative is the final thing they're handing in, but he's doing it in stages. After the learning is complete, the students can demonstrate their competency with the high stakes final, for Eugene's case, it's the paper, right? Or portfolio. These activities receive summative feedback that the student can carry forward to the next semester or potentially their professional settings. Here are some examples of assessment feedback. Anybody else out there? I know Eugene happened to point out it's what he's doing. He's doing a bunch of summative that basically make up the, he's doing a bunch of formative that make up the summative product. Anyone else doing anything similar?
Yeah, I do that in my entrepreneurship course. The main project for the students in the entrepreneurship course is to put together a business plan, for whatever their business product and company and all that stuff that they're creating during the semester. And I'll do halfway through the semester, week 7 or so, they'll hand in kind of a rough draft of their business plan. So I could really kind of dig down into the sections that they've completed and really, work on those. And then ultimately, right, that goes towards the final document they're going to hand in at the end of the semester.
That's great.
I have that also for the project, the final project and the senior project capstone. They hand in first a draft of their proposal, then they write the formal proposal. And in stages, we go with deliverables, 4 deliverables in the middle. And then they do the final paper.
And you see improvements on the,
Oh,
on
yeah.
what you, right?
Right. So again, like how you said, the feedback is very important. It's so crucial. Because if you don't have that timely feedback, they will keep making the mistakes in there.
Exactly. And if you have that overachiever that wants to be working 2 or 3 weeks out, you have a friend Glazer in your class, right? She's doing the product, and now you might be getting it if she didn't get that initial outline. It might have changes everything in the perspective of the paper. Right? Feedback tells a student a lot about our expectations and about how we view the quality of their work. Feedback helps students learn what good work looks like and helps them improve. Providing answers to the following 4 questions on a regular basis will help provide quality student feedback. These are simple questions. They're telling the student what they're doing well, what they need to improve, and how their work relates to their classmates, and how they can do things better. Have you guys, anybody have something similar maybe in their back pocket? They're using their own questions? No? Have you seen something like this before, these 4 questions?
I mean, I don't know if I've seen the specific questions, but it's the thought process, right? It's just kind of the things you're doing when you're providing feedback, and it's kind of in your thought process of what you're trying to tell them or teach them or help them improve or whatever it is. So
What I sometimes do is I post on Canvas an article I published long ago, which I typed up. It was for American Philosophical Association Committee on Teaching, examples of 30-point questions on a final exam that I graded as an A, 2 as a B, 2 as a C, 1 as a D, and gave explanations in the margins of why the student got the grade he or she did, without naming, of course, the person. So that gives the student some idea of what my expectations are, or what I think an A essay looks like as opposed to a D essay.
That's great. That's they want to see samples of, their expectations.
Yeah. They can ask themselves, what level am I on right now?
Yes. And what level is mastery, right? What,
Exactly.
so if you only remember one thing from today, remember these 4 questions. It's effective feedback answers these 4 questions for the students. Right. Yeah. Motivation. I pointed out it was in 2 of your submissions today. Why motivation is an important predictor of learning and achievement. Students who are more motivated to learn persist longer, produce higher quality effort, and learn more deeply and perform better in classes. Once you have told the student what they can do, can't do, and how can they do it better, it helps motivate them. By giving the student feedback on how they can improve, you're also saying you believe in them and that they can accomplish the task. The 4 questions from our last slide help the student realize they can do it better, which will increase their motivation. One thing you can craft your feedback with motivational language. I'm sure I imagine you've all heard the growth mindset terminology before, right? That was, I think, almost 2 or 3 years ago. We're all in a blur from COVID. I mean, maybe it was more than 2 years ago. It was that it started being talked about in campus, and since then we've worked with the first year courses to incorporate a growth mindset. One of CTL's favorite activities that we recommend all the time for getting feedback to students is incorporating a minute paper. Why? Because they're really versatile. They allow you to provide manageable amount of time and useful feedback to the student. Those that don't know, a minute paper is a low time, low stakes way to assess if your students recall of a lesson. It can be deployed in the beginning, middle, or end of class. You provide the student with a statement for them to reflect on the lesson. It's as simple as being administered with, tearing a piece of paper out of the booklet, a note card, or you can use a Google form like we did earlier. The nice thing about it is I chose to share everybody's feedback with everybody. You don't have to do that, right? So that allows you to then partake. After you review all the materials from the student, you can decide what does the students as a group have, or maybe there's something nobody got, or there's an emphasis on something that even the students aren't thinking about, that you can now kind of set up the students to reinforce their learning on the topic. One thing too, if you choose to provide the feedback at the beginning of the next class, or you could also use it as a touch point between classes. So if you're using Canvas or you email your students regularly, you can choose that as a way to, whether it's to encourage them to start doing the work or if there's pre-work for the next class. Is anybody else using minute papers or anything similar? No. So here are some sample prompts. Your prompts can be designed to gauge interest, attitude, opinions, analysis, or conceptual connections. So ending your class with a minute paper allows thinking more deeply about the most important concepts discussed in class, which provides a meaningful sense of closure to the class session and focuses the student's attention on the major point or issues addressed, increasing the likelihood that the student will consolidate it into long-term memory. A number of research studies indicate that if a student engages in short review of materials presented to them at the end of class period, they retain almost twice as much of its factual and conceptual content when tested at a later point.
I don't do
So-
this on paper. I mean, I do this basically live. My other class is a public speaking course, so it's a little bit different. It's a very engaging, obviously, course because it's public speaking. So the students are up there doing presentations and stuff like that in front of the whole classroom, right? So it's all about feedback, and it's all about working on their confidence and their motivation and all that. So what I do is the first half of the semester, I do debates, and there's one team debating another team on a topic. But they're assigned the topic, so they don't know which side they're going to be debating. So it makes it fun and challenging for them. They do research during the week, and then they come in and they debate either the pro or con side of this particular question. But there's always a third team that's actually the evaluation team that is just there to give feedback, just live feedback, of what they're doing, what they're seeing, what they perceive as the audience in their performance, because it's all about them getting more comfortable as public speakers, being up there in front of a room full of people presenting. So I'm really kind of doing a lot of live feedback for them right there in the classroom. And what you start to see throughout the semester is they start to talk about the things that I'm teaching, right? And the skills that I'm teaching, right? And how that now translates into them doing live either debates or team research papers, presentations, whatever they're doing throughout the semester.
That's very good.
Now, do the students are they giving each other verbal feedback at that point, or is
Mhm.
it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it's live verbal feedback, two-way discussion between them, what they saw, what they perceived as the evaluation team, and the students who are in front of the classroom giving the feedback and kind of adjust what they're doing. So it's very very interactive for all of them, and they enjoy it. And a lot of times you see, because you always have students who are very nervous and really have a difficult time getting up there and speaking, and other students who are much more comfortable doing it. And as the semester progresses, you see all the students kind of taking the students that struggle the most kind of under their wing, really working with them, really trying to help them improve and feel more comfortable up there, and giving them a lot of positive motivation and feedback and stuff like that. But they really kind of get, put those ones who struggle the most kind of under their wing and work with them. So it's really fun.
Very nice.
It's great.
One thing I've always
Yeah.
done, if I can throw something in here, I usually choose two students the beginning of each class to take especially careful notes for that day, and when the class begins next time, to give the class a resume of what we talked about the previous time. One of the advantages of doing this is that many students do not like to talk in class. I didn't talk much in class myself when I was in college, but this assures me that I will be able to speak at least twice during the semester with every student and listen to how they tell me what we've learned the previous class, see how close they are to what I was trying to convey, and get feedback from other students, and then the new class, after that, the new class begins. I found that useful.
So they share their notes, or do they share the notes with the class, or do you share it with the class? Curious.
Well, no, they have to take very careful notes of what goes on in class that day. They can, of course, talk with each other because they can contact each other on Canvas if they wish, but that's not required.
I was just curious if, some of us take notes so differently. So I was wondering if it was more given to you and then you make edits or feedback on it, or if it's
No.
kind of me as a student, here's my work for the day, everybody. And then people get feedback from the class of, oh, I would have included when he,
Oh, absolutely,
Talk-
absolutely. What I always tell them that you don't have to worry about repeating what the previous student said. Everybody looks at this material in their own way, and I'd like to hear two different people talk about what they learned last time. I know it takes about 5 minutes in the class at the beginning. Then I'm getting feedback from them in this way. They're telling me what they've learned. That's quite different for the two students, and I can give them feedback too. I can talk with them personally for the 5 minutes.
Great.
Maybe you give me some feedback about that. Is that a good idea?
Yes, the thing that I caught you that hit when you just said it, Eugene, that was most important, I think, is personal.
Yeah.
Personal feedback to the students, the community. So you're creating a connection between you and the students, which
Dialogue. Wow. Rubrics.
yeah, here's the question. All right. So this is one of those rubrics that are intimidating. It's a lot there, right? It's the typical rubrics I think a lot of us think of. It's everybody, I'm sure we've all seen rubrics before, I would hope. Rubrics are both an assessment tool for the faculty, but also a learning tool for students. They can ease anxiety about a grading process for you and your students by laying out specific criteria and performance expectations for an assignment. They provide students with a clear understanding of the evaluation criteria, correct? Are you guys familiar? This one's a bit intense, right? We're all used to this. I think this is, for me, if I got an assignment and this was in the assignment, I probably put it away and not look at it for 2 days because I'd be like, oh my God, that's going to be a big project. I have to understand. It gives a sense of that's intense. That's a big project going on. Right. However, so rubrics don't always have to be that intense. They can be simple. One thing, though, I do hear a lot with hesitation to rubrics from faculty is they can be time consuming, right? Because to build a perfect rubrics, I like to think about rubrics almost like when I work with a younger person as your resume. It's never going to be perfect. It's a living document. It's always going to be changing, right? So your rubrics can be the same way. It's just the starting of it and then improving it each time it gets used. And we know when we spend a lot of time on something in the upfront, it pays off dividends at the back end for everybody. So I want to start and look at a simple rubrics. And Fran is probably going to give you guys a deeper dive into rubrics, but she's also going to explain to you this amazing rubrics that she did with her class of non-science majors. Fran, you want to take it and
Sure.
take
Sure, thanks. So the first rubric that Noreen showed you was intense. And can you go back to that one?
Yeah, I
Noreen?
was just going to say yes.
So if you're constructing a rubric, and you all know this, you're going to figure out what are the criteria, what are the important pieces that the students need to be aware of. So this happens to be a problem-solving rubric. It's one of the AACU value rubrics that have been refined over time and heavily vetted. And so the criteria going down the side are steps in problem solving: define the problem, identify strategies, propose solutions, and so on. And going across are the levels of proficiency. And the way that you make this a learning tool is by filling in all these boxes with what does proficient look like? What does beginning look like? And you can probably see that most clearly. I'm sure this is highly legible, right? Let's see. under identify strategies, the beginning level is identifying one or more approaches that might solve the problem, but they're not necessarily context dependent. And the capstone level, the proficient level, is identifying multiple approaches for solving a problem that are contextual. So you lay out what distinguishes these different levels of quality or proficiency. And this is time consuming, right? You only want to do this if it's an assignment you're going to use again and again and again. And when Noreen was preparing this and we were talking about rubrics, she wanted an example of a rubric that can save you time without requiring that you put in all this time up front by clarifying expectations. So that's where we go to the simple one. I love teaching non-majors biology because they come in afraid of it. They hate it. They don't want to be there. They need to get a B- because they're teacher candidates and they're just not happy campers. So I asked them to write haiku because in order to write a good haiku, you really have to grasp the essence of a subject and it has to be creative. It has to be playful. And so I wanted to make this a low stakes assignment. It's worth 5 points. Only 2 of the points are about biology. The other 2 are about being creative and being playful with the concept. And because I really care about grammar, I see extra spaces between words. It's a curse. And so mechanics was a point because it makes me nuts, right? So this lets you tell the students what really matters to you as well as what's important to the topic. And I did this years ago. I said, okay, there's just going to be good or not good. There's going to be mastery and needs improvement. And I laid out some explanations. And I had students submit rubrics 3 or 4 times during the semester. And I was teaching 100 students in class. It was really easy to go through the haiku and give them a score. And just to finish the story, before exams, I would put their haiku up as a slideshow. And it was kind of nice because they were playful and they were also a review of the content and it took their minds off the exam because they're looking for their own. And then I put everybody's names at the end. So it's an example of how you can get your students to do something again and again, moving towards better while you're being consistent with your grading. The ones I graded at the end of the semester, I was applying the same rubric as at the beginning. And I must have had hundreds over the semester. And it really was easy to do. So Noreen's about to show you how she made this better.
Oops. I thought for a second when I just looked at that, I was like, did I spell encourage right? You just look at a word, you're gonna double guess yourself. So when scripting feedback, I always say use encouraging words. This is where we're going to leave. I loop back to growth mindset. You know, students can be demotivated by negative criticism, right? So typically on a low end rubric, you'll see poor, fair, or other language that basically senses that the student can't accomplish something. With Fran's great rubrics, I wanted to change it to have a growth mindset appeal. So instead of needs improvement, I put still developing, right? So it gives them at least a little bit of a clap and applause. Okay, you submitted something, you tried. We got rid of the not, we put in a missing, right? Down at for the mechanics of it, maybe they didn't really understand it. So not only did I change the wording, but I also put in so that they could take a deeper dive. I found just a short YouTube video, 5 minutes, and I'm giving the students the link. So it encourages them to take this step further. Because, you know, we're great, teachers are all great, but sometimes when you hear it from somebody else's words, or, you know, right now, you've probably found a TikTok video on it. Who knows how long they would get down that web of, and they'd be an expert within maybe 5 TikToks and they'd be able to do it. Some other thoughts of growth mindset phrasing. You know, sometimes a lot of people use rubrics for discussion boards. You know, some language to change it up to instead might be to not yet, evidence, beginning, developing, approaching, applying. So, are anybody using rubrics in their classes? Amanda, are you using any growth mindset wording or?
Yeah, I have a rubric I like for discussion board posts, and I basically take it and then I expand it for, I make more of a list. I used to have more of a grid, but I make more of a list of criteria. And I expand the one I have for discussion boards to each assignment. And then when I meet with students, I show them, because I meet with each of them, and I show them how it's been expanded. So they've been doing X, Y, and Z, and now there's more capacious stuff in the paper that expands on that. So I scaffold the rubrics.
Okay. So put in a little plug for our own department. CTL is always happy to help anyone develop, redevelop rubrics. We also have a resource library, so books available if it's something. ATS can help you guys put rubrics into Canvas if that's something that you're looking to do. One thing I note, and this goes back to, I think Amanda mentioned earlier, Eugene also mentioned it about personalizing stuff with individual students. So you might think, well, if I use a rubrics and I'm just checking a box in Canvas, how is that personal? Well, down at the bottom, after you do it, you can still hit the little, it almost looks like a YouTube link or icon. You could click that and give a audio comment to the student. So now you're not taking the time to type something out. You're clicking the scores and you verbally giving them individual feedback. And the other button here too is if you don't want to type, it actually types you for you. And I will say I tested it out and it's a lot better than my iPhone text to speech. So did any of you guys get to go to CPI Day this year? Something Fran caught, the rest of us might not have caught as much of. One of the criteria that was listed as a challenge. So that means the students they noted it in a kind of a needs work, was providing timely feedback on their progress. So just something to keep note of. I tend to think we're probably giving feedback. The students don't realize that it is feedback. So I think, Robert, what you're doing in class, I bet sometimes the students don't even realize they think it's just part of the discussion. They don't realize, I bet, that you're giving them that timely feedback in the moment. I think a lot of our students get confused sometimes what our feedback is, because maybe we make it so personal and they don't realize.
Yeah, typically I let the evaluation teams give the feedback first, so it's coming from student to student, because they really enjoy that. And they banter back and forth and have some laughs and all that stuff, right? But they're getting that feedback from each other. And then after they're kind of done with that, then I'll give some, more higher level feedback on some specifics for them.
Yes.
And a challenge on the student satisfaction index means that students said that they're very dissatisfied, but they also said it's very important to them. Right. So following on what Noreen said, that your students might not realize when you're giving them feedback. So 2 comments. One is more is always better with feedback, almost always. And also telling them and put a little metacognitive spin on it, right? So I'm going to give you feedback, and what I want you to do with that feedback is go back to your work and make it better. so that they realize what you're doing and what your intent is. Especially with freshmen, that can be really helpful. Because we have a lot of first generation students and they may not know how it works.
So I'm curious of any of the techniques we've gone over today, if there's anything that you're thinking about maybe incorporating. Or trying.
Think I'm just encouraged to keep building out my rubrics and kind of keep simplifying them, because I know I have that one assignment for that one class where I have a really, really simple rubric, but for some of my written homeworks for other classes, I have ones that are a little bit more elaborate, and to some degree they have to be. But I feel a little more challenged now to think, especially going into my research methods class next semester, where can I simplify things maybe a little more, and that class involves a lot of feedback and in ways that are usually a little more time consuming for me because of the kind of detail oriented nature of the class and what they're doing. And so I think maybe spending a little more time, I have some rubrics for that class I think already created, but I think going back over them, seeing how I can kind of fine tune them and simplify them might be helpful.
I find with the detailed feedback, Nicole, that if you prioritize yourself, certain things that you want them to know next, sometimes you can repeat the bones of your feedback and adjust it. So it might be that you're giving sort of one thing each time and then adding it to it.
That's helpful. Yeah, that is a really helpful idea, especially because the main project is that they're creating an experiment, they're carrying it out, and they're writing a research paper. And so a lot of the feedback really relates to that paper. And so doing drafts of that paper, they draft each section, get feedback on each section's draft, and then at the end they submit the final paper. So there's definitely things that I can build on there. Or
you could also write something in like an announcement if there's something overall that you've seen. Like I just try and prioritize a lot with our students, especially. I like how that we have the app now, because with shorter assignments with the app, I respond almost right away sometimes when it's not something where I'm doing like line editing. If they're asking questions. And sometimes I tend to say similar things, but sometimes the similar things give you room to add each time.
yeah, the app has definitely been great, especially I know I have a stats exam tomorrow that I'm giving. And so for some of these homeworks that people have been trying, people start trying ones that they didn't do already or retrying them closer to the exam to practice. And I try to encourage them to do that. And the assignments are actually for this course, this is optional. I give them a kind of, if they accrue enough points, they can earn a small bit of extra credit, but it kind of just really incentivizes them to really practice a little bit more. But so today it's like I gave some people feedback this morning and I already see that they commented back with, updating their answers and understanding it better. And it's like, this happens on a day that we don't have class over just a couple of hours because we have that ability to do that.
So I'm curious, am I missing what app you guys are using? Or is
Oh,
it
the
like
Canvas
short?
app.
Okay,
The
Canvas. Okay,
app.
I'm like,
So it alerts you like when,
yeah.
like I do sometimes a shorter assignment where they're just asking a question and answering a question of their peers, and I can sort of watch and I can respond right away, great question, or I hadn't considered it that way, or, actually this character, I thought of it this way, or whatever it is. But sometimes you're prioritizing things for the next step, and having that ready saves you some time and lets you adjust it.
Yes. Brian, did you have any amazing insight before we're at the end? And give everybody a lot more time on their own, but I think this is great time together. I'm hopeful that you guys are leaving with some valuable information, if not some time together with colleagues was nice. I think Amanda had the best seat in the house outside enjoying. the
My
nice-
battery is almost gone, so you made it just in time. Oh, thank you.
Thank you guys so much for coming
you.
again.
Thank
I'll at
you.
least send you some stuff for feedback. Please tell us. And we're a resource that would love to work with you guys at CTL.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good
Right.
to see everybody.
Yes.
goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.